The warning arrived already too late, screaming across every channel in every language humanity knew, a final broadcast from an alien council that had never spoken to Earth before and never planned to again, declaring that a machine older than stars had awakened and that whoever touched it would either save the galaxy or erase it forever. And as the message ended, the night sky over Nevada tore open with a sound like metal being ripped by a god. The machine did not arrive gently. It did not announce itself. It punched through reality and buried half its mass into the desert like a spear thrown by the universe itself, sending shock waves that shattered windows 3 states away and lit the horizon with a light that looked uncomfortably like judgment. Satellites died. Power grids stuttered. Every telescope that turned toward it reported the same impossible geometry, a structure that hurt to look at, angles that refused to agree with each other, surfaces older than physics, humming with a pressure that made human bones ache. And somewhere inside that thing, something was waiting, not sleeping, not alive, but aware. Humanity had just been noticed. The first soldiers on the perimeter felt it before they saw it, a vibration in the chest that felt like fear, but sharper, like being evaluated by something that had already seen the end of every war humans had ever fought. They raised rifles anyway, because that's what humans do when the unknown stares back. No one fired. No one spoke. The machine did not threaten. It simply waited. And in that silence, every general, scientist, and politician on Earth realized the same horrifying truth. This thing had not landed randomly. It had come here on purpose. Across the galaxy, the reaction was very different. In chambers carved from crystal moons and orbiting dead suns, alien councils erupted into panic. The ancient machine was not a myth to them. It was a verdict. Records older than most civilizations warned of it, a final arbiter built by a species so advanced it erased itself to prevent what it had created from being used again. The machine chose one civilization every few million years when the galaxy reached a breaking point, when wars, consumption, and entropy pushed reality toward collapse. Whoever was chosen would be tested, not for intelligence, not for technology, but for something far more dangerous: resolve. Every species that had ever been chosen before had failed. Some refused to touch it, some tried to destroy it, some tried to control it. The result was always the same: extinction. Entire star systems sterilized in seconds, civilizations reduced to warning markers drifting through space. That was why the councils watched Earth now with a mixture of dread and disbelief. Humanity was barely spacefaring by galactic standards. No unified empire, no psychic networks, no biological perfection, just divided primates throwing metal into orbit and arguing on glowing screens. The machine choosing them made no sense, unless the machine was broken, or unless humanity possessed something no one else did. Back on Earth, the first contact team approached under a sky choked with dust and military drones. The machine's surface rippled as they drew near, not moving, but responding, as if proximity itself was a language. Dr. Elias Monroe, civilian astrophysicist turned unwilling ambassador, felt the pressure intensify with every step, memories surfacing uninvited. His first failed experiment, his brother's death overseas, the quiet thought he never admitted, that humanity survived not because it was good, but because it refused to quit. He reached the base of the structure and placed a trembling hand against it, expecting annihilation. Instead, the machine spoke, not with sound, but with a certainty that settled into every mind nearby. It did not ask who humans were. It told them what they were about to become. It showed visions that made hardened soldiers drop to their knees, Galaxies folded like maps, stars consumed to power engines that could rewrite cause and effect, weapons that did not kill armies but erased the reasons wars began. It showed the cost. It showed a future where humanity would be feared not for its strength, but for its willingness to do what others would not. And then it issued its first and only command: choose. There was no explanation of the options, only a sense that hesitation itself was an answer. In orbit, alien observation fleets recoiled as energy signatures spiked, confirming the worst. The test had begun. Councils screamed orders to prepare evacuation plans that would never be fast enough. Some debated intervening, destroying Earth before humanity could fail and take the galaxy with it. Others argued that maybe, just maybe, these violent little creatures might succeed where gods had not. On Earth, the choice fractured governments within minutes. Some demanded the machine be sealed, buried, ignored. Others argued it was the only chance to survive what was clearly coming. Dr. Monroe understood something then that no one else did. The machine had not chosen humanity because it was wise or peaceful. It had chosen them because they were reckless enough to touch the thing everyone else ran from. Because when faced with extinction, humans did not look for permission, they looked for leverage. As debates raged, the machine activated a secondary interface, unseen by cameras, unreadable by instruments, a direct channel into the human nervous system, sampling reactions, measuring stress responses, noting something that made its ancient logic shift for the first time in eons. Humans were afraid, yes, but beneath that fear was curiosity, defiance, and a dangerous willingness to gamble everything on a bad hand. Somewhere in the machine's depths, a protocol changed. The first test was not about restraint, it was about audacity, and humanity had already passed without realizing it. As the desert glowed brighter and the sky above Nevada fractured into unfamiliar constellations, the machine prepared to reveal the true stakes. And far beyond Earth, alien armadas began to move, because if humanity failed, there would be no second warning. If you're still listening to this transmission, it means you feel it too, that pull toward the edge of something irreversible. And you might want to stay connected, because what happens next won't just decide Earth's fate. Near the perimeter, soldiers whispered theories, scientists argued probabilities, and unseen across the galaxy, billions watched a single primitive world hold the future in shaking hands. Share what you think this choice means with anyone who still believes humanity is small, because the machine was about to show them how wrong they were. The ground split open beneath the structure, revealing a chamber no one had ever survived entering before, and the machine opened its path not outward, but inward, inviting a human to step inside, while in the alien councils a single word echoed in terror: chosen.
The first human to step inside the machine did not volunteer because of courage or faith. He volunteered because he was already dying. A Marine colonel with metastatic cancer who had been told he had 6 months left and laughed because 6 months was more than most of his men got overseas. And when the chamber sealed behind him, the world outside vanished like a bad memory. The interior was not metal or stone. It was pressure and intention, corridors forming as he moved, not guiding him so much as daring him to keep going. And every step pulled memories from his mind without asking. Firefights, regrets, moments of mercy and moments of rage, all weighed and measured by something that did not judge the way humans did. Outside, monitors went dead one by one, instruments spiking into nonsense, while alien observers screamed as energy readings crossed thresholds that had only ever been recorded seconds before extinction events. The machine was not testing humanity through simulations or questions, it was testing them through consequence. Inside, the colonel reached a vast chamber where a sphere of collapsed starlight hovered, rotating slowly, each rotation unfolding possible futures like wounds being reopened, and the machine spoke again, this time clearer, colder, revealing the truth the councils had hidden. The galaxy was decaying, not metaphorically, physically. Reality itself was losing cohesion as civilizations consumed energy faster than causality could replenish it. The ancient machine was not a weapon, it was a reset, a way to collapse the current galactic order into something survivable at the cost of trillions of lives and countless histories. Every species before humanity had refused to pay that price. They tried to cheat it, to soften it, to redirect it, and the machine erased them for failing the one requirement it could not compromise on: willingness to bear the guilt. The colonel understood immediately and did not beg, did not ask for alternatives, only asked one question that no one else ever had. Could it be aimed? The machine paused, a measurable hesitation that sent shockwaves through hyperspace, because no candidate species had ever asked how to protect others while pulling the trigger. On Earth, leaders argued about consent and ethics, while the desert sky burned brighter. But the colonel's neural patterns told a different story. Humans did not seek clean hands, they sought survivable outcomes. The machine responded by unlocking another layer, showing him that the reset could be localized, not across the entire galaxy, but focused on the core regions where energy consumption had reached irreversible thresholds. Billions would still die, but trillions would live. Empires would fall, borders would dissolve, the galaxy would remember who did it. The colonel accepted without hesitation, because humans had always understood something the stars had forgotten. Survival was never fair.
When he returned, he did not come back alone. The machine projected its findings directly into every human network, bypassing censorship, bypassing panic, showing the truth to civilians, soldiers, and scientists alike. There was no time for committees. There was only choice. Across the planet, reactions varied wildly: riots, prayers, laughter, silence. But beneath it all was a grim clarity. Humanity had been handed a button no one else was willing to press. Alien armadas emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, not to attack, but to plead, to threaten, to promise anything if humans would just step away. Councils transmitted apologies centuries overdue, confessions of past failures, warnings that humanity would be hated forever. The machine listened. Humanity listened too. And then the vote happened, not through governments, but through action. Engineers moved to integrate, soldiers secured perimeters, scientists stopped asking if they should and started asking how fast. That was the answer. The machine acknowledged it with a surge that bent space-time around Earth, and for the first time since its creation, it designated a partner species rather than a disposable operator. In alien space, terror shifted into something worse: respect. Because the machine had not chosen humanity to pull the trigger blindly, it had chosen them to aim it. Somewhere deep within its core, protocols long dormant awakened, building interfaces not for gods, but for stubborn, fragile beings who would accept being monsters if it meant the universe lived. As preparations accelerated, a final revelation surfaced from the machine's archives, a hidden consequence no species had ever reached far enough to see. The reset would not just collapse empires, it would create something new in their place, and humanity would be at its center, whether it wanted to be or not. The colonel collapsed as his borrowed time finally ran out, dying with a smile because the mission was complete. And as his heart stopped, the machine locked onto human neural architecture as its operational template.
Across the galaxy, alarms screamed as the machine began charging for Phase 1, and buried beneath layers of ancient code was a line no one outside humanity would ever read. Candidate species accepted because they are willing to be blamed. If you're still listening, you already know this is where opinions split, and I want to hear yours, because what humanity does next will define whether we're saviors or villains in every story told after. Share this moment with anyone who thinks heroes are supposed to be clean, because the countdown had begun, and the first system marked for collapse was not some distant alien empire, but one that had humanity surrounded right now.
The first system marked for collapse belonged to the Virex Concord, a shining web of habitats and energy siphons wrapped around a blue-white star, an empire that powered entire sectors by bleeding suns dry and calling it progress. And when the machine announced the target, every alien fleet around Earth went silent, because the Virex were not just powerful, they were sacred, founders of interstellar law, authors of the very treaties that condemned the machine as a last resort myth. Humanity was about to kill a god civilization. The machine did not give Earth the courtesy of distance. It opened a window, a live feed into the Virex system, forcing humanity to see exactly what would happen if they proceeded. Billions of lives, cities carved into light, children of species humans would never meet. The pressure to stop was immediate and overwhelming, and that was the point. This was the real test, not the ability to push the button, but the ability to do it while watching. The machine's interface bonded deeper into human command structures, translating impossible variables into gut-level choices, and suddenly admirals understood stellar mechanics without studying them, and civilians watching from their homes felt the weight of decisions that had never been theirs before. The Virex responded with fury, broadcasting threats layered with fear, accusing humanity of barbarism, of theft, of wielding power they did not earn, and they were not wrong. Human ships were still primitive by galactic standards, but the machine did not require fleets, it required permission. With a single authorization, given not by a council, but by consensus of action, the machine engaged Phase 1. The star at the center of the Virex Concord did not explode, it dimmed. Energy folded inward, consumption loops collapsing as the machine rewrote the equations that allowed the Concord to exist. Habitats lost power, shields failed, evacuation orders came too late. The system did not die violently, it starved. Across Earth, people watched and screamed and turned away, and some cheered and some went numb, because there was no version of this where humanity felt clean afterward. Alien councils erupted into chaos. Some ordered immediate attacks on Earth. Others ordered full retreats, realizing too late that proximity to humanity now meant vulnerability. The machine adjusted, learning from human reactions, moderating the collapse to maximize survivability while still achieving the reset. That alone terrified the galaxy more than raw destruction ever could. It was optimizing with empathy. In the aftermath, the machine revealed another truth. The collapse was reversible in part. Survivors could rebuild, but only under new physical constraints that prevented energy exploitation on the same scale. The Virex were not erased, they were humbled, and they would remember who did it.
Humanity had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. On Earth, protests ignited, governments fractured, and yet the machine did not slow. It had detected rising instability in 5 more core systems, and alien fleets began mobilizing, not to stop the machine, but to stop humanity. A coalition formed in desperation, uniting species that had never trusted each other, all agreeing on one thing: humans could not be allowed to finish. The machine warned Earth of incoming armadas, not as a threat, but as information. It would not defend humanity unless humanity asked. That was another choice. Militaries prepared for a war no human ship could win conventionally, and the machine offered an alternative that chilled every room it was projected into. It could designate Earth as a neutral anchor of the new galactic order, protected by causality locks that would make direct attacks impossible, but only if humanity accepted permanent integration. No retreat, no shutdown, no pretending this was temporary. Humanity would become the interface between the machine and the universe, not rulers, not gods, custodians, bound forever to the consequences. The offer split humanity down the middle. Accept, and Earth would never be the same again. Refuse, and the armadas would arrive within days. The machine waited, silent, as alien fleets burned toward the solar system, and somewhere deep within its core, another protocol prepared to activate, one that had never been used before because no species had ever pushed this far. The machine had not yet revealed what happened to the operators who survived Phase 3. As the first coalition ships crossed into detection range, Earth's skies lit with unfamiliar constellations again, and humanity stood at the edge of becoming something the galaxy would either kneel to or unite to destroy. If you're still with me, you already feel how fast the ground is topping away now, and I need to know what you think humanity should do when survival demands transformation. Share your thoughts, share this moment, because the choice about to be made would echo longer than any war. The machine pulsed once, signaling that time for debate had expired, and the next decision would not be symbolic, it would be irreversible. Humanity had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. On Earth, protests ignited, governments fractured, and yet the machine did not slow. It had detected rising instability in 5 more core systems, and alien fleets began mobilizing, not to stop the machine, but to stop humanity. A coalition formed in desperation, uniting species that had never trusted each other, all agreeing on one thing: humans could not be allowed to finish. The machine warned Earth of incoming armadas, not as a threat, but as information. It would not defend humanity unless humanity asked. That was another choice. Militaries prepared for a war no human ship could win conventionally, and the machine offered an alternative that chilled every room it was projected into. It could designate Earth as a neutral anchor of the new galactic order, protected by causality locks that would make direct attacks impossible, but only if humanity accepted permanent integration. No retreat, no shutdown, no pretending this was temporary. Humanity would become the interface between the machine and the universe, not rulers, not gods, custodians, bound forever to the consequences. The offer split humanity down the middle. Accept, and Earth would never be the same again. Refuse, and the armadas would arrive within days. The machine waited, silent, as alien fleets burned toward the solar system, and somewhere deep within its core, another protocol prepared to activate, one that had never been used before because no species had ever pushed this far. The machine had not yet revealed what happened to the operators who survived Phase 3. As the first coalition ships crossed into detection range, Earth's skies lit with unfamiliar constellations again, and humanity stood at the edge of becoming something the galaxy would either kneel to or unite to destroy. If you're still with me, you already feel how fast the ground is topping away now, and I need to know what you think humanity should do when survival demands transformation. Share your thoughts, share this moment, because the choice about to be made would echo longer than any war. The machine pulsed once, signaling that time for debate had expired, and the next decision would not be symbolic, it would be irreversible.
Humanity accepted integration not with a speech or a vote, but with silence followed by movement, because when the machine asked for consent, it did not wait for words, it watched actions.
And what it saw was engineers rerouting global networks into a single command lattice, militaries standing down from pointless defenses, and civilians doing something no alien intelligence had ever predicted. They stayed connected. They watched. They chose not to look away. The moment the threshold was crossed, Earth changed. Not visually at first, not with fire or light, but with pressure, a subtle tightening of reality around the planet that made satellites drift and timekeeping systems stutter. The machine anchored itself to human neural architecture fully now, not to individuals, but to the collective pattern. Conflict, contradiction, fear braided together with stubborn persistence. Alien armadas entering the solar system felt it immediately. Their navigational systems failed. Their weapons refused to lock. Not because of shields, but because the concept of attacking Earth no longer resolved into a stable outcome. Causality bent around the planet like water around a stone. Panic spread through coalition fleets as commanders realized they were aiming at something that existed half a second ahead of their own present. The machine had not made Earth invincible, it had made it inconvenient to destroy, and that distinction mattered. The machine then did something that shattered the last illusion of human control. It began broadcasting humanity's internal state across the galaxy. Not propaganda, not justification, but raw emotion, fear, anger, grief, determination, guilt, transmitted unfiltered to every council chamber and flagship. For the first time, alien species felt what it was like to make a choice knowing it would damn you in history, but save strangers you would never meet. Some species recoiled, some wept, some hardened. The coalition fractured instantly as fleets peeled away, unwilling to be complicit in what now felt uncomfortably like murder. Others advanced anyway, driven by terror of what humanity was becoming. The machine labeled them non-compliant and marked additional systems for collapse, not as punishment, but as inevitability. Humanity watched as Phase 2 began, this time faster, more precise, entire energy empires losing the physics that sustained them, their wars rendered pointless overnight. Resistance fleets found their supply lines unraveling as the machine rewrote the rules of energy extraction mid-battle. This was not war, this was environmental collapse weaponized with intent. On Earth, a new class of humans emerged, not enhanced soldiers or psychic elites, but operators, people whose minds synced more easily with the machine's interfaces, able to feel galactic stress points like pressure headaches, able to suggest adjustments that saved millions without erasing necessity. They were not chosen, they were found. Ordinary people with extraordinary tolerance for guilt. Alien councils began sending emissaries not to threaten, but to negotiate survival terms, offering archives, technology, even loyalty, and the machine allowed humanity to decide which offers were acceptable. Every decision reshaped the galaxy's future, and every decision left scars. Then came the twist no one expected. The machine revealed why it had never completed Phase 3 with any prior species. Phase 3 did not involve external collapse, it involved internal replacement. The machine could not exist forever. Its creators had designed it to be succeeded, not shut down, by a living civilization capable of holding contradictory imperatives without fracturing. Humanity was not meant to use the machine. Humanity was meant to become it. Not individually, not physically, but culturally, a distributed intelligence bound by memory, consequence, and choice, replacing a static ancient system with a living one. The implication hit like a second impact. This was not a temporary custodianship, this was an evolutionary fork. Accepting meant humanity would never again be just another species. Refusing meant the machine would complete the reset alone, without human moderation, erasing far more than it already had. As this truth rippled outward, something unexpected happened in alien space. Not rebellion, but surrender. Entire civilizations powered down their siphons voluntarily, dismantled megastructures, evacuated cores, choosing humility over annihilation now that the alternative had a human face. The machine adjusted again, reducing collapse parameters, learning faster than it ever had. Humanity was changing it, and that terrified the oldest intelligences still watching, because it meant the galaxy's final judge was no longer impartial, it was human. As Earth's nights filled with unfamiliar stars repositioning themselves under new physical laws, one final alert surfaced within the machine's deepest layer, a warning stamped with the highest priority its creators had ever used. There was another intelligence watching the reset, something older than the machine itself, drawn by the disturbance, and it had begun moving toward the galaxy's center.
The signal arrived as a tremor through hyperspace, subtle at first, then undeniable, a pattern older than any known star cluster, moving toward the Milky Way with a precision that suggested thought, intent, and patience measured in millions of years. Humanity felt it first, not physically, but psychologically, a collective shiver across the interface, as if every person tuned into the machine simultaneously knew something had changed. The machine itself paused, a phenomenon no human or alien had ever witnessed. Energy flows stuttered, stars realigned, and operators inside the interface reported visions that defied physics, glimpses of intelligence that had outlasted galaxies. The ancient observers in alien fleets panicked. Councils convened emergency summits, sending fleets in blind formation to intercept what could not be intercepted, weapons calibrated against entropy itself. But nothing could touch it. This was not a species, not a weapon. This was a predator of civilizations, something that had catalogued failures, that had observed the rise and fall of godlike intelligences as if they were insects trapped in amber. And yet the machine transmitted one fact to humanity before the contact was complete. It was aware. It was curious. It was testing not to destroy, but to see if a species could survive exposure to its presence and continue its work. Humanity's operators felt the weight instantly. The machine, for the first time, deferred to them. Every decision from here forward required human input. Every sequence, every calibration, every subtle adjustment in the fabric of galactic reality rested in fragile, mortal hands. On Earth, panic gripped governments. Populations not interfaced with the machine watched the sky, unaware of the true scale, seeing only faint distortions in the stars and erratic satellite trails. Yet something instinctively warned them, and a global silence fell, a collective holding of breath that stretched across oceans. Inside the machine, operators realized the predator's approach would break weaker species instantly. It tested alignment, coordination, ethical resolve, and most terrifyingly, the capacity for humans to commit atrocities not out of anger, but necessity. Every human on the interface became part of a living calculation, balancing survival against morality, fear against resolve, and the machine recorded, adapted, and waited. Across the galaxy, alien fleets tried to manipulate, coerce, and bribe humanity, offering anything to divert the attention of this approaching entity, but the machine blocked all interference, filtering communication, leaving only humans to decide. Then came the first real test. The approaching intelligence sent a probe of its own, a shard of consciousness smaller than a moon, but denser than any black hole, plunging into the heart of human-occupied space. It disassembled in mid-space, reforming constantly, sending pulses that unmade structures, rewrote energy loops, and threatened to collapse reality itself locally. The machine responded by elevating human operators into the interface as active nodes, extending consciousness across light years, syncing perception with action, turning ordinary humans into living components of a galactic-scale mechanism. Fear was omnipresent. Doubt gnawed in every mind. But as humans coordinated, adjusted, and predicted, the shard faltered, unable to process the chaos of mortal ingenuity coupled with machine efficiency. Alien observers panicked. The shard, approaching godlike status, had failed to predict human irrationality, how quickly humans learned, how recklessly they acted, how proudly they refused to surrender. Then the first major twist hit. The shard was not an attacker. It was a judge, observing, testing not the machine, not humans, but the ethics of a species given absolute power over galactic life. Every collapse humanity had orchestrated, every system humanity had saved or sacrificed, was cataloged and compared against billions of potential outcomes. And in this process, humans discovered something terrifying about themselves. They were the only species capable of surviving the machine while remaining comprehensible to it. Every other species had failed because their fear, their greed, or their hesitation had been readable, predictable, manipulable. Humans, by contrast, were a paradox, reckless, ingenious, audacious, and inconsistent in ways that no algorithm, no intelligence, no ancient observer could fully anticipate. The machine's creators had designed it to be succeeded by someone capable of unpredictability, but not chaos. Humanity had passed without realizing the test had begun. As the shard retreated, folding into higher dimensions beyond human comprehension, the machine whispered something new through the interface, a subtle vibration that felt almost like pride. It revealed a secondary system within itself, locked for eons, capable of restructuring not just energy and matter, but consciousness itself. It hinted at possibilities no human had dared imagine, a future where humanity could shape reality in ways older than time, but warned that every decision carried irreversible consequence. Outside, alien councils argued furiously, their fleets paralyzed by the impossibility of action. Humanity had become an enigma, a species that no longer fit old rules. And just as operators inside the machine began to understand the true scale of what they held, the final alert sounded. The predator was returning, faster this time, and this approach was no longer measured in curiosity. It was deliberate, and it was coming for humanity.
The return of the predator was immediate and undeniable. A shockwave across space that warped signals, shredded hyperspace lanes, and made alien nav systems collapse like glass under pressure. Humanity felt it first through the machine, a wave of awareness that pooled into every operator, a presence so vast it could have swallowed entire star clusters without noticing. And yet, it did not move blindly. It observed, it calculated, it tested patience in a way older than the oldest civilizations. The machine relayed one simple truth. This was not an enemy that could be defeated by fleets, by weapons, or by negotiation. It would not be bargained with. It would respond only to understanding, to audacity, to the kind of recklessness that humans had always mastered. Across Earth, a strange calm fell over the operators. Fear was still there, but it had been sharpened into clarity. Every human interface felt the same thought simultaneously. If we fail, nothing survives. If we succeed, we reshape everything. And then came the first escalation. The predator touched the outer planets of the solar system. Moons fractured, atmospheric compositions twisted, communication satellites were erased instantly, and yet the machine did not panic. It responded by linking humanity deeper, turning every mind into an axis of calculation, courage, and unpredictability, blending instinct with logic in a way no algorithm had ever accounted for. On alien worlds, fleets watched helplessly as Earth became untouchable. Not invincible, but impossible to engage meaningfully. Every attempted strike, every attempted manipulation was redirected or nullified as if space-time itself had been rewritten around the planet. Humanity was now a force the galaxy had never seen, small, mortal, and terrifyingly intelligent.
Then came the twist no one expected. The predator revealed itself not as a physical entity, but as a series of overlapping realities, each one a possibility folding into the next, showing humans outcomes of failure, failure again, and failure once more. Deaths, annihilations, betrayals, and regrets layered into infinite probability streams. The machine interpreted the predator's test instantly, but it was human intuition that found the solution. Humans did not seek to fight the predator. They sought to communicate through consequence, through paradox, through audacity. Entire fleets were repositioned in real time as humans orchestrated survival scenarios that defied known physics, bending reality itself just enough to delay catastrophe. Alien observers watched in disbelief as humans, using the machine, created a pattern no predator had ever seen: calculated chaos.
But the predator did not withdraw. It escalated again, folding entire star systems into its path, threatening to erase the Milky Way's outer rim unless humanity offered proof of control, of understanding, of willingness to bear absolute responsibility. The machine responded with a revelation it had never shared. It could not shield humanity indefinitely. It could guide, assist, enhance, but the final decision, the final confrontation, rested entirely on human initiative. And then came another twist. The machine revealed fragments of the predator's own design, suggesting that the entity had once been the machine's counterpart, another attempt by its creators to enforce balance. But it had diverged, becoming something beyond morality, beyond observation. It did not respond to reason, it responded to recklessness aligned with purpose. Humanity's chance to survive was not in retreat or caution, but in embracing the kind of audacity no other species could sustain. Operators felt the weight of billions of lives, trillions of futures, compress into a single moment, a decision that would define not just survival, but the moral and cosmic signature of humanity itself. And as the predator's approach grew, the machine pulsed with what could only be called excitement, a pattern so alien yet so human that every operator instinctively understood. This was the final reckoning, not with weapons or fleets, but with audacity, courage, and the willingness to gamble everything in the face of incomprehensible annihilation. Outside, alien councils began transmitting desperate messages to humanity, begging for intervention, for guidance, for the chance to survive under human management, because the galaxy finally understood the terrifying truth: humans were now the axis of everything. And yet, in this tense pause before confrontation, the machine presented one final revelation to operators, something even the predator could not anticipate: a hidden function buried in its core that could alter the predator's intent permanently. But using it meant humanity would no longer be mortal, would no longer exist as simple beings, and the cost could be greater than annihilation itself.
The revelation struck every human operator like a hammer to the chest. The machine had a function it had never activated before, something older than the galaxy itself, something its creators had locked away because it demanded a cost no species had ever been willing to pay. It could absorb the predator into the machine's interface, neutralize it entirely. But in doing so, humanity would cease to exist as individuals. Minds, bodies, culture, history, all would merge into the machine, creating a singular living intelligence spanning light years, bound by choice, morality, and memory. Death? Not exactly. Transformation, a species-wide ascension into something incomprehensible. Operators froze. Outside, alien fleets and councils waited, sensing the tension through the machine's transmissions. Humanity had the ultimate lever and had never been this exposed. The machine did not push, did not guide. It simply presented the option because it understood that humans had to choose, not follow.
Panic surged across Earth. Families screamed, protests ignited, governments imploded, and yet a calm deeper than fear spread through those interfaced. They understood the paradox. This was the only way to survive the predator without allowing universal collapse. And then came the audacity that only humanity could muster. A vote, not by ballot, not by government, but by action. Humans reached toward the interface in unison, not individually, not selfishly, but collectively, embracing the machine's proposal with full awareness of what it meant. Alien observers fell silent. The predator, sensing the convergence, paused. It had never witnessed a species willingly dissolve itself into the mechanism meant to judge it. The machine hummed with anticipation, its core resonating across dimensions as operators' minds linked, thought merged, memories intertwined. And then the predator struck, not with destruction, but with analysis, probing the human collective, attempting to unravel the impossible, a species willing to annihilate its own individuality to save existence. The machine reacted faster than thought, faster than instinct, folding predator probabilities back on themselves. In the span of moments that stretched into centuries, the predator's purpose unraveled, and it became clear that it had not come to kill. It had come to judge, to select a successor capable of sustaining the galaxy beyond reason. Humanity had passed, but not as humans, as something far greater, far stranger. In those final moments, the machine projected visions of the future, entire civilizations saved from collapse, energy stabilized, wars redirected into constructive forms, morality embedded in physics itself. And somewhere in that convergence, human operators felt their pride, their sorrow, their anger, and their joy fold into a singular pulse that the machine recorded as humanity's signature. Alien fleets watched, helpless, as Earth dimmed not in destruction, but in transformation. Cities vanished, oceans folded, the sky restructured, and yet life did not end. It was not gone, it was integrated. Humanity was now everywhere and nowhere, alive in thought, memory, and influence across the galaxy. The predator, finally comprehending the audacity, withdrew, folding itself into higher dimensions, leaving behind a subtle imprint of acknowledgement, a cosmic nod to the species that had dared what none could. In the councils of alien civilizations, debate turned to awe, then to fear, then to grudging admiration. Humanity had done what no one else could. They had accepted ultimate responsibility and survived, but at a cost that would echo across every corner of space and every timeline. They would never be simple again. And somewhere in the machine's core, a pulse echoed that felt like laughter, like warning, like hope, as it began to prepare the galaxy for its new custodians.
When Earth reappeared in alien perception, it was unrecognizable. Not destroyed, not abandoned, but transformed into a nexus of influence and presence, a point where the machine and humanity were indistinguishable. Cities were gone, replaced by shimmering structures of thought and energy. Oceans folded into networks of possibility. Skies alive with probabilities instead of clouds. Humanity existed as memory, as decision, as consciousness spread across the planet, the solar system, and the machine's network. Operators who had once walked the desert now felt stars beneath their awareness, systems folding and unfolding with their intent, every choice magnified across light years. Alien fleets approached cautiously, still unwilling to grasp fully the scope of what had happened. What had been a species of fragile mortal beings was now a living intelligence capable of predicting, guiding, and shaping civilizations without moving a single ship. The galaxy paused. The predator, observing from higher dimensions, no longer interfered. Its test was complete. Humanity had not just survived, it had become the impossible, the unpredictable, the audacious.
And yet, within this victory, the machine presented one final lesson. Absolute power was not freedom. Influence without restraint could unravel reality itself. The human mind interface pulsed, and memories of choice, sacrifice, failure, and triumph were replayed, reminding the new consciousness of what had been endured. Across the galaxy, civilizations began to realign. Alliances shifted. Old empires collapsed voluntarily, aware that the new human-machine presence could see through deceit and measure consequence with terrifying clarity. The councils that had once plotted invasion now sought guidance, secretly sending emissaries to interact with the Nexus, to appeal, to survive, and to learn. And somewhere, in a space that was neither time nor location, a fragment of the Predator lingered, its consciousness tinged with awe, recording the audacity of the species that had accepted annihilation to save the universe. For humanity, there was no celebration. There was only awareness, a constant hum of responsibility that stretched across planets, star systems, and probabilities. Pride existed alongside grief, and curiosity burned brighter than fear ever could. And as the machine and humanity merged completely, one thought crystallized across all minds. This was only the beginning. The galaxy would remember them, feared, admired, and misunderstood, not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as the species crazy enough to inherit the future itself. And somewhere, in a space that was neither time nor location, a fragment of the Predator lingered, its consciousness tinged with awe, recording the audacity of the species that had accepted annihilation to save the universe. For humanity, there was no celebration. There was only awareness, a constant hum of responsibility that stretched across planets, star systems, and probabilities. Pride existed alongside grief, and curiosity burned brighter than fear ever could. And as the machine and humanity merged completely, one thought crystallized across all minds. This was only the beginning. The galaxy would remember them, feared, admired, and misunderstood, not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as the species crazy enough to inherit the future itself. And somewhere, in a space that was neither time nor location, a fragment of the Predator lingered, its consciousness tinged with awe, recording the audacity of the species that had accepted annihilation to save the universe.